WWE has a long and storied history, and it loves to celebrate most of what's come before. There are certain things, though, that Vince McMahon wants you to forget. Here are 12 shocking facts that the WWE would love to see erased from their history books.
Are you ready?
Hello wrestling fans, this is Van Venom, and if you're new to our channel, please remember to subscribe and put the notifications on so you don't miss any of our unbelievable videos. Number 12. The Failed Spinoffs. If you're under the age of 20, you probably don't know about all of the failures that have been a part and parcel of the WWE experience. The sheer number of things that Vince McMahon has tried and failed at promoting would boggle the mind, and most are only brought up as jokes in network specials. Sure, you might remember the failed and soon-to-be rebooted football experience that was the XFL, but do you remember the World Bodybuilding Federation? It was a joke of a promotion that really only ended up cursing the world with Lex Luger. Before that, there was also the WWE fitness supplement IcoPro, gallons of which probably still exist in a Stamford warehouse somewhere. Simply put, the WWE is ashamed of its failures and would really rather you forget all of them. Number 11. Losing the Monday Night Wars. Here's a big shock for newer WWE fans. The WWE was losing during most of the Monday Night Wars. All of the ratings on the network make it look like a close race, but WCW actually had a long, unbroken streak of ratings wins against the WWE. Most viewers tend to think of the Attitude Era as what broke WCW's mold, but the losing company actually did fairly well against the likes of Austin and The Rock early on. WWE wants people to think that it was the strength of the WWE product that really won, when in reality it was a series of bad business decisions that really killed WCW. Business decisions that, in fact, WWE doesn't seem too afraid of copying itself these days. Number 10. Saudi Arabia. WWE's relationship with Saudi Arabia is, at best, complicated. The country has a long history of making moves that go against international human rights policies, and there are definitely things about the culture that runs counter to what WWE claims to represent on television. If you notice, the WWE has gotten very cagey about its continued contract to do business in Saudi Arabia. Its latest show in the country didn't even mention the nation in which it took place, just the city. After the vocal outcry that came with the country's first show, it's not really all that surprising that WWE would like to make its money and have you forget that it even did business in Saudi Arabia. Number 9. The Nexus. Remember the Nexus? You know, that awesome group of younger wrestlers with luminaries like Wade Barrett, Daniel Bryan, and CM Punk? You know, the group that tried to take over the WWE and was a perfect place to build up new stars like Husky Harris, aka Bray Wyatt, and Skip Sheffield, aka Ryback. As it turns out, WWE really wants you to forget them. This group was the victim of backstage politics and terrible storylines, and they've chased almost every member of the group out of the WWE. There's no way that the WWE wants you to remember that it wasted the talent of so many great wrestlers due to its own incompetence. Number 8. Homophobic angles. It's easy to say that the 90s were a different time, but WWE took homophobia to a totally different level than most companies. It's not just that characters like Goldust are insensitive by modern standards, it's that WWE delighted in throwing out slurs and using languages that would get it boycotted today. Goldie might be the biggest example, but there's plenty of other activity on Raw that just wouldn't fly today. From the casual usage of homophobic and transphobic slurs to the recurring segments that were meant to demean and degrade, the family-friendly WWE really doesn't want you to remember any of this. Number 7. Racist gimmicks. Here's another fun one the WWE doesn't want you to remember. Its history of being way behind the times when it comes to race. We're not just talking about the various Native American characters played by white dudes, or the terrible gimmicks of headhunters, or even Hakeem the African Dream. No, we're talking about when the hottest angle in WWE was about a fully fledged race war. The Nation of Domination versus Disciples of Apocalypse versus Los Boricuas may seem like a pretty standard feud, until you remember that each of these groups was based totally on the race of its members. It's a really uncomfortable thing to watch, and WWE really wants you to pretend like it never happened. Number 6. The Invasion. WWE really loves to talk about how it beat WCW. What it doesn't want to talk about is how badly it botched the whole process of bringing the two companies together. WWE wanted WCW to be its own brand, but it had problems from the beginning. The big names sat out their lucrative old contracts, and the smaller names had trouble in the locker room, leading to an angle that literally had major WWE names representing the WCW side of the invasion. This is definitely one of those things WWE would love to sweep under the rug. Number 5. CM Punk. Love him or hate him, CM Punk had a huge following in WWE. He was not only involved in some great matches, but even his promo segments are still among the most watched videos on YouTube. He's a guy who had it all until he walked away from the company due to dissatisfaction with how he was used and how his health issues were handled. Since then, WWE's gone out of its way to minimize Punk's role. That means ignoring one of the longest title reigns in modern WWE history and his excellent feud with John Cena. Most importantly though, it means ignoring the frankly shocking accusations about how the company treats even its biggest stars and the unsafe work practices. Punk might come back someday, but WWE will never talk about his accusations. Number 4. Women's Wrestling. Women's wrestling is a big part of the business these days. The company's hottest star is Becky Lynch, women have their own pay-per-view, and the WWE goes out of its way to talk about the women's revolution every chance they get. Obviously then, WWE wants you to remember the long and storied history of women's wrestling in the company, right? Wrong! WWE glosses over most of the pre-revolution era, and especially wants you to forget about all of the bra and panties matches. They'll talk up Lita and Trish all day, but they ignore most of the women who were underutilized or used only for sex appeal. WWE wants you to think women's wrestling has changed, but not that they were the ones that made it worse in the first place. Number 3. The Steroid Trial. 1994 was not a great year for pro wrestling. A WWE-affiliated doctor was accused of providing steroids for various wrestlers, and it was implied that he did so under the direction or blessing of Vince McMahon himself. This illegal practice brought the company under the gun in New York and nearly bankrupted WWE. The trial was a circus from beginning to end, bringing in old wrestlers, featuring tons of perjury and making the company look like a laughingstock. It took a long time for WWE to recover from the trial, and they've done their best to make viewers forget that it even happened in the first place. Number 2. Owen Hart's death. On one hand, WWE will absolutely never deny Owen Hart's death. It was a true tragedy, one in which the company holds a tremendous amount of blame. It's gone through the courts and been settled with the family, and it was one of the company's darkest days. What WWE doesn't want you to remember, though, is that Owen's death didn't stop the lackluster Over the Edge pay-per-view. While the company did deftly cut away from the fall and certainly acknowledged what happened, it still made the utterly classless move of continuing the show. The show must go on, they say, but there are exceptions to the rule, and this was definitely the case. Number 1. Chris Benoit. If there's one thing WWE really wants you to forget, it's Chris Benoit. The former champion and all-around great wrestler was a huge part of the company's product during the early 2000s, but he's been totally stricken from the records. He's not mentioned by the announcers, and he's not part of the Hall of Fame. This is, of course, the right thing to do. Benoit murdered his wife and son before killing himself, and he doesn't deserve to have any type of spotlight. With that said, WWE largely wants you to forget the Benoit tribute show they did the night of the murders. The company rushed to put on a show in the same vein as that for which they held for Owen Hart, albeit before they knew what had happened. The news that Benoit was the killer actually broke during the episode, leaving WWE looking like it supported a murderer. It's no wonder then that this tragedy tops the list of things WWE would like you to forget. I'm Van Venom. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to put a like, subscribe, and share your opinion in the comments below.